This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's actually kind of gloomy out right now, oddly enough, but it's probably going to heat up over the course of the day and then become uncomfortable. So accept it for what it is while it lasts, I suppose. So before I get into anything else, I have a couple of things I need to do. Well, one I need to do and one I kind of want to do. The one I want to do real quick. In about a month, just a couple of days away from a month, on October 11th, will be my 8th anniversary on YouTube. Yes, 8 years on YouTube, pretty much consistently with very few real breaks in between. And there's something I'd like to happen, and it's complete vanity. It's got nothing to do with any kind of mechanics of YouTube. It doesn't really change anything about the nature of my universe or anything. It's just something that I'd like to see. And that is, I'd like to see if I can get to 8,000 subscribers by my 8th anniversary. I've been at 7,500 subscribers for quite a while now. I don't really worry about the numbers too much. It's just one of those things where it's like, it'd be kind of nice after, the better part of a decade, to at least, have kind of a matching thing. And there's something about the number 8 in numerology that's supposed to be lucky, and it would look nice. So I don't usually spend a lot of time on here, e-begging for attention or any kind of that kind of support or something. Like I said, the numbers usually aren't a big deal to me. But here's what I would ask, and I'm only going to do this once. I'm not going to do this every show. I'm going to make this one request, and I might do one tweet, and that'll be it. And if we hit that number by my 8th anniversary, great. If not, oh well, que sera, life goes on. But if, for some reason, you have not already subscribed to my channel, I ask that you consider doing so. Elsewise, if you have not previously shared out either my channel link or maybe a link to one of your favorite videos of mine or something to your Facebooks or whatever else, I just request that you try or do. Usually my videos, my streams and such, they get somewhere between, let's say, 250 to just shy of 400 views, unless it's something really special going on. So I figure if everybody who watches this stream just takes a second to share out the channel link, or again, one of the videos of mine from the past that you might like, on the off chance that ends up getting 2 people to hit the subscribe button, then I'm set. Yeah, so that's as far as I'll go with that. Just a request. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do for my 8th anniversary. I'm actually trying to plan ahead of time, unlike previous years where I just kind of threw it all together at the last second. But yeah, so I have about a month. October 11th is my anniversary. So looking forward to that, and I appreciate your support elsewise. And then there's the second thing. It also deals with the number 8, because today is the 8th of September. And that is Sister Scribe's birthday. And I know she's probably not listening right now because, unlike me, she, sleeps in, she calls it. I just call it laziness. But either way, she'll eventually listen to this, I figure. And on that note, and I underscore the word note, she deserves a birthday song. And so here we go. Sister Scribe, this one's for you, and hopefully my mic does not spike and blank out anything I'm about to do, because if it does, I'm going to feel bad. And a 1, and a 2. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, second best child. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Sister Scribe. Enjoy being 54. I mean 45. I mean 44. 44. That's it. Yeah. Anyway, so there's that. Now, with all that out of the way, who's joining me? on this beautiful Sunday morning. Keeverdam, good morning to you. And thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing the links to the GoFundMes and fundraisers for our friends, Ron Harushan, AJ, Natalie, and Angela Ariaga. If you guys could take a look at those when you have the opportunity. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share those out on social media, that would be very much appreciated. And thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing those. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Josh Hammond, good morning. Scribbles is actually a dog, cat, fox that drinks pepper jack. No, dog, cat, fox, and Scribbles are two separate entities. Right, dog, cat, fox?
Wowie, wow, wow.
See, I can't, I'm not a ventriloquist. I can't throw my voice across the room like that. He's a different, never mind. Moving on. Mike Savage, Blart. Mike Savage, are you okay? Okay, well, it's Sunday, it's early or whatever. And Noah Essentio, good morning. Snortapoopas Cuber. Snortapoopas, good morning. The Blakester, good morning to you. Shady Grin, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning to you. JB, good morning. TF4X, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning to you. Some Naniel Nation, good morning. Zed the Snarky, good morning. Shadowclaw, woo. Resolute Germ, good morning. Who else is here? The Best Remy, good morning. Tier Alexander, good morning. And looking. Anybody else? Is everybody in? Is everybody in? Found has been found. Good morning to you. And I think that's everybody. If I missed anybody, I hope I didn't. If anybody's lurking or anybody's in the future, good morning. So yes, we have a few interesting stories for today. Or at least I hope so. This one, so if you don't know, and I'm sort of dating this as it were, on Tuesday, 2 days from now, will be the second presidential debate with a different pair of presidential candidates, because that's just the year we're living in now. Yes, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will debate on ABC with a whole bunch of rules that apparently Kamala Harris doesn't like, including microphones that are going to be cut off, and I don't think that she's going to be allowed to use note cards, and I don't think they're going to be sitting down. She wanted all of those things for various reasons that can only be speculated at. But I saw this article debut yesterday, and there was the subheading of it caught my attention because my personal recollection does not match this subheading. So here we go. This is from the Washington Post. Sorry, New York Times, pardon me. New York Times. Harris's combative debate style will get its biggest test against Trump. Well, yes, because up to this point, she's never had an actual presidential debate. But here's the subheading. Kamala Harris's razor-sharp debate skills have powered her political ascent. And I was like, that's powered her political ascent? Because she didn't even carry her own state in the primaries when she was running for president. She got trounced by Tulsi. She tried to drag Biden on busing, and that didn't do her much good. That's powered her. I thought just happenstance and her appearance powered her political ascent, or certain descents powered her ascent. But anyway, her success next week, that's presumptuous, will turn on how well she adapts to an unpredictable rival. Okay. Now, I'm not a political analyst and I'm not a political science expert, but there is, there's a small amount of footage on Donald Trump debating people. I know it's a very obscure amount of information on Donald Trump debating people, but I think you could probably get down the patterns and habits of Donald Trump, maybe. And I know it's a very, very small amount of footage and examples available of Donald Trump debating people, but I think it's possible that he's not as unpredictable as someone might suggest. Anyway. Few of the people gathered in the San Francisco church knew quite what to expect from Kamala Harris. Well, that's because she's been locked away for the better part of the Biden administration because she's an embarrassment. But otherwise, it was 2003. What am I saying? What's past is prologue. Okay. It was 2003, and the two men she faced in her first political campaign were well-known brawlers locked in a rematch to become the city's district attorney, one of whom was her former boss. Miss Harris was a little-known government lawyer who had landed in the landed in the local gossip pages for dating Willie Brown, one of the state's most powerful politicians. The attack on her was obvious: political patronage packaged with a whiff of sexual intrigue. Yes, and over the course of the last 21 years, that has followed her, and not without justification. After an audience member asked about her ties to Mr. Brown, she rose from her seat at the front of the sanctuary as her two opponents, Bill Fazio and Terrence Hallinan, looked on. Okay, the suspense is building, guys. I'm at the edge of my seat. Miss Harris walked behind Mr. Fazio, asking if the audience remembered how Mr. Hallinan had attacked him for being caught in a massage parlor in a 1998 raid. Okay, so her first response to a question about her own behavior is to do a whataboutism to somebody else. Okay, that's a dodge. She walked behind Mr. Hallinan, asking if the audience remembered how Mr. Fazio had attacked him for being a deadbeat dad who failed to pay child support. Okay, well, let's say that they both are rightfully cited as behaving badly. So you are as bad as them? Okay. As faint gasps echoed across the room, Miss Harris wrapped her punch in a gauzy pledge. Unlike her opponents, she promised that she would run a campaign based on the issues, not on negative attacks. Okay. Who asked the question? An audience member asked her. And so she decided to spike her opponents with their past scandals, but she promised to run a campaign based on issues, not on negative attacks. Now, admittedly, I haven't read the whole article yet. I haven't read the article at all. If the author is attempting to show her great debate skills, not a good start. The crowd jumped to its feet in a standing ovation, recounted Jim Stearns, a political consultant who had helped Miss Harris in the race. Wow, it sounds like Bill Maher's audience will clap at anything. For Mr. Stearns, the moment has come to embody what he described more than 2 decades later as a hallmark of Miss Harris's political style: prepare and then punch hard. So her response to a question about her own relationships and behavior is to not answer the question and instead dig up dirt on her opponents who were not being asked about their behavior in that instance. I don't know if this is the W you think it is, but then who knows with the electorate these days. Quote, "She certainly understands there's only one way to deal with someone who is attacking you, which is to hit them back harder than they're hitting you," Mr. Stearns said. Quote, "She's a combination of very ferocious and very disciplined at the same time." An audience member asked her a question, and she dodged and whatabouted her opponents and then said she wasn't going to run a negative campaign. Again, I'm not a political scientist, but that is about as incoherent a response as I think I could imagine, and nearly as incoherent a analysis from her own manager or advisor. Okay. That carefully combative approach will face its biggest test yet on Tuesday when Miss Harris? I thought she's married now. Okay. Miss Harris confronts Donald J. Trump on the debate stage. Oh, she's Miss Harris and he's Donald J. Trump. Okay. Much of her performance will depend on whether she can successfully adapt to an opponent best known for his unpredictability. No, I don't know if you know this. She's going to be asked questions from the moderators, and the mics are going to be turned off. I mean, she may indeed and probably will respond to what Trump says here and there and otherwise, or have to contrast what she has as a position versus Donald Trump's position. but it's not an Oxford style debate or something. It's not a cage match. She's going to have answers to the questions asked her by the moderators. Sort of like what we had at the beginning, where an audience member asked her a question and then she attacked her opponents. Okay. During the 2020 primary debates, Miss Harris became notably rattled after being attacked by Tulsi Gabbard, who was then a congresswoman and trailing in the polls over her record as a prosecutor, a line of questioning she had prepared for. Well, she may have prepared for it, but she still got trounced. Miss Harris has said that she expects Mr. Trump to lie about his record and hers and to deploy deeply personal attacks. Well, I expect that you will lie about your record and his and also deploy deeply personal attacks. So I guess it's a push. Some of her aides worry that an agreement between both sides to mute the microphones when a candidate is not speaking will hamper her ability to land an effective punch. Yeah, her only effective punch, the only one that I've seen highlighted over and over again, is, "Excuse me, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking." That was it. I mean, I see that in clip shows about her debate skills all the time. Nothing about the issues so much, nothing about having a cogent response to a question asked by the moderator or having an insightful rejoinder to her opponent. No, just, "I'm going to act all self-righteous that you talked over me." Like Maxine Waters. There's like a collection out there of Maxine Waters says, I reserve my time, or I reclaim my time. That's not a win. That's just smugness, snarkiness, self-righteousness. And so she's going to lose out on being able to say she was interrupted because of microphones being turned off. That's their biggest concern. I'm sorry. If your most effective punch is complaining that you were talked over, oh boy. But allies do not expect her to be shaken by the format or any wild accusations from Mr. Trump. Okay, what will she be shaken by? Debating is one of her biggest strengths. Okay, a skill that has fueled her political ascent even amid notable public stumbles in interviews and shifting policy positions. Okay, well, what if, and I know this is a tough, she might actually be prepared for this one this time, but what if we didn't have the interview last week where 18 minutes of an interview out of 45 minutes where half of it was cut for some reason. The first question she's asked is, what are you going to do the first day that you're in office as president? And she couldn't even answer that clearly. If one of the moderators asked her something that simple and she can't answer it, what? I don't know. These things aren't really debates. I guess that's part of the problem with this. You're approaching this as though there's going to be a head-to-head exchange of ideas and back and forth like a town hall or something like that. That's not what this is. This is going to be kind of like an Oxford style debate. Someone gets to speak for a couple of minutes and then someone else gets to speak and you go back and forth. And sure, somebody can try to mumble or yell over the absence of a microphone, but for, simple politeness' sake and for the format's sake, it's very slotted. Anyway. Quote, "She is very calm," said Mazie Hirono, the Democratic senator from Hawaii, who spent 4 years sitting next to Miss Harris on the Senate Judiciary Committee and watching as she questioned Trump administration officials. Quote, "I don't think that Trump will be able to intimidate her or bully her, which is his usual tactics," unquote. Well, I don't know if you know this, but Kamala Harris doesn't actually require anyone to be working off of to embarrass herself. I don't know if you've witnessed her just casually in front of a microphone over March Madness or going to the border or addressing an entire demographic of the planet in discouraging them from coming to our border. I don't know if you know this. Trump doesn't even need to be there. If Trump was not there and it was just three people on a panel asking Kamala Harris questions about her policy positions or her plans, Trump, I mean, this is one of the things that I hope that the Trump people, for their own sake, are prepping Trump to do, and I hope Trump actually does himself, is just play it straight. Give her all the room that she needs to say everything she wants to say or thinks that she can say. Fake her out. Do a feint, right? Feignt. like something's going to happen. She's all riled. She's all ready to be all combative, and then she's got nothing to work with. That'd be my idea. It's a blood sport. Miss Harris forged her political rise through rhetorical combat. No, she was picked out of oblivion by Joe Biden. She did no. Okay, capturing attention with lacerating exchanges on debate stages and in congressional hearings. Well, where has that skill gone over the last, now 5 years? Because she really wasn't gaining any points in 2019 or 2020. And then again, she was plucked out of obscurity. She would have gone nowhere if Biden hadn't picked her for vice president. She had nowhere to go. She had completely failed. She wasted $40 million on a presidential campaign, didn't even win her own state when it came down to the voting in the primaries. And she was an afterthought at that point. Okay. Her attacks are strategic and direct, with a controlled delivery, sometimes even a smile, and an instinctual sense for a news-making moment. Great. Can you give me an active example? Not one where an audience member asks her a question and then she spikes her opponents and then says, I'm not going to run a negative campaign. So she never actually answers the question. Can you give me an example of this skill of hers? Like, give me a quote, give me the exchange. Maybe that'll happen here in the course of things. In 2010, so 14 years ago, okay, she won a tough race for California Attorney General after twisting a pivotal 47 seconds to her advantage in the contest's only debate. All right. Her piercing questioning of Trump administration appointees and officials from... Wait. No, hold on. What 47 seconds? What was the pivotal 47 seconds? Why wouldn't you... You're going to detail this later. Now, just so you know, I have not read this article. I do not have an encyclopedic knowledge of Kamala Harris's political career. So if you're telling me that in 2010, 47 seconds changed the entire game board for her, you'd think you'd want to recount what that is. Is that going to happen in this article? I mean, just for my own knowledge, I'd hope so. Thank you, Faustonia. Holy cow. Thank you so much. Hi, Scribe. Harris, quote, forged her political rise through rhetorical combat, unquote. Really? Nothing about her relationship with Willie Brown? That is interesting. Well, I don't know if you were here for the first paragraph or so of this article, but that was brought up, and she effectively, and I put quotation marks around that, effectively dodged having to answer for that in being completely contradictory and hypocritical. But yeah, this author is being awfully generous. Anyway, okay, so 47 seconds to her advantage in the contest's only debate. Jump ahead 6 some odd years. Her piercing question of Trump administration appointees and officials from her perch on the Senate Judiciary Committee built her national profile. Yeah, and then she failed. And a brutal exchange with President Biden during the 2020 primary over race and his warm remembrances of segregation as senators transformed her image into one of a presidential contender. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. I don't know if you remember this. She failed. She failed utterly. She was so great in California that nobody in California voted for her in the primary to the point where she even won her own state. She had $40 million of a campaign war chest that was burned into nothing as though she were the Joker. She was all but forgotten by the time that Biden won to become the nominee. Or effectively, not by the convention, but before then. So, what are you talking about? Many of those moments were carefully planned. Another feature of how Miss Harris debates. Really careful planning? Have you looked at the stories about how her office has been run over the last 3.5 years? Careful planning. Why wasn't she at the border the day after Biden publicly gave her the responsibility of finding the root causes of the migrant problem? Why wasn't she organized enough to have a photo op, at the very least, at the border the day after? It took months and a Lester Holt interview in between before she did. Careful planning. She is known to pore over policy briefs, devote days preparing for debates, and workshop attack lines far in advance. Then why couldn't she answer, what are you going to do on your first day as president? I realize she's had a very short amount of time compared to other presidential candidates to gear up for a presidential campaign, but at least a couple months ahead of her first interview. And in the course of being vice president, it never occurred to her to think, well, golly, if I was in the office, what would I do? Right? Given her more cautious governing style and personal demeanor, governing style, when has she governed over anything? What Miss Harris's more aggressive political instincts can seem surprising, some current and former aides said. It would surprise me. Quote, she is somebody who really is a warm, caring human who will call you and ask how your kids are doing by name, said Brian Brokaw, who ran her campaign for attorney general. I bet you when she's on that call, she's holding a 3x5 card with the names of your kids on it, just a reminder what their names are. I have a distinct feeling that she's got some cheat sheets. Quote, at the same time, she also has the capacity to be ice cold and do what it takes to win. Oh, really? What did she do to win in an ice cold fashion in 2019? Anything? Okay. Miss Harris says her approach was developed during her years in politics in San Francisco, a densely packed peninsula stacked with ambitious would-be politicians and dominated by a single political party. It is a place where politics can feel like a cage match with an ocean view. What were the 47 seconds in 2010? Quote, I always start my campaigns early and I run hard, unquote, Miss Harris told the New York Times in 2015. Yeah, you know why they have to reach back a decade or so for any quotes of hers on campaign strategy? Because she's not talked to the press this entire time. And when she did, it was stilted and only half broadcast. Quote, maybe it comes from the rough and tumble world of San Francisco politics, where it's not even a contact sport, it's a blood sport. Kumate, kumate, bottom brick, USA, A-OK. Anyway, this is how I am as a candidate. This is how I run campaigns, unquote. Why don't you give us some quotes from her presidential run? Why are you going back to 2015? Okay. Even before Miss Harris ran for office, she was known among her colleagues in San Francisco for her assertive manner in the courtroom as a local prosecutor. State Senator Scott Wiener. Oh, is that the guy that wanted to decriminalize infecting people with HIV knowingly? Amongst other questionable legislative decisions? Yeah. State Senator Scott Wiener recalled working with Miss Harris in the city attorney's office in the early 2000s. Oh, okay, so 2 decades and more ago. Okay, during his first solo jury trial, he stopped into Miss Harris's office to ask how to handle a judge who was hazing him. She walked him through her strategy. At the end of the conversation, she looked Mr. Wiener in the eye. You know, it's a good day at work when you have to look Mr. Wiener in the eye. Is this a stealthy Willie Brown reference by any chance? At the end of the conversation, she looked Mr. Wiener in the eye and offered a final piece of advice. Oh, sorry. And offered a final piece of advice, quote, don't let her bully you, unquote, she told him. Stand your ground, unquote. Wait. Okay. You ever hear there's a phrase out there that I love because it's so apropos. Damning with faint praise. Damning with faint praise. And this is another example. First there was 47 seconds in 2010 that turned the course of the election for her or whatever. What were those 47 seconds? Without telling us, I just have to assume they were brilliant or something? You tell us that she walked through her strategy with this guy to get around this judge. And without telling us what the strategy was, all that you offer up is like ABC after school Hallmark card type platitudes. Is that supposed to impress me? I'm trying to come at this from the angle of I'm an undecided voter. I'm not an undecided voter, but let's just say for the sake of argument, I'm an undecided voter. Okay, convince me that Kamala Harris actually has the skills, the knowledge, the I don't know, whatever, the ability to lead and to inspire and to get things done. And so far, you've said, well, she completely finangled her way around asking a question and ran a negative campaign on her two opponents and then said she's not going to run a negative campaign. You've danced around the fact that she utterly failed her presidential campaign. You mention 47 pivotal seconds and then don't detail them. And then you say that she offered this guy some great advice to get around a difficult judge, an obstacle, right? Something that might require some finesse, some diplomacy, some familiarity with someone else's habits in order to solve a problem. And the best that you're able to give us, or the deepest you asked of this person for information on this encounter, is don't let her bully you, stand your ground. It's not useless advice, but it's no more complicated advice than a father would give to their child about a bully on the schoolyard. So how is this supposed to impress me if I'm an undecided voter? That really takes the breath away. Take my breath away. Miss Harris quickly adopted her courtroom maxim to her emerging political career. Okay, the church has no video or audio of the 2003 event where she leveled the personal attacks in her first political campaign. That's probably to her benefit, because the story, as you put it, really does not paint her in a positive light or a coherent light. But anyway, Mr. Fazio does not remember the interaction, and Mr. Hallinan died in January 2020. Both men denied the personal allegations that Miss Harris raised that day. So really all we have is an unconfirmed rumor of her amazing performance at this 2003 event. So it's hearsay. Okay. I wonder what, if Miss Harris as a prosecutor were offered up that as evidence in something, I wonder if she would think that it was valuable in any way, shape, or form. But Mr. Stearns, Mr. Stearns, you mean the guy who was her paid consultant? Okay, but Mr. Stearns vividly recalls the moment, in part because he spent time sketching out how she should respond to possible questions about her relationship with Mr. Brown before the event. And apparently the strategy was, don't answer the question, and instead spike your opponents in negative ways. Dodge, weave, avoid. Play whataboutism. Miss Harris was particularly interested in understanding the implications of various tactics and how each man was likely to respond to certain lines, he said. Well, if the story you say is true, her opponents were sitting down, she was being asked a direct question by an audience member, and then she walked behind each of them and then spouted off their last great controversy. And what were they supposed to do? They probably sat there and just looked like they'd just been kicked in the nuts or something. And there's no story here that they reacted. There was nothing in that story about them reacting, just that she decided to dodge by literally hiding behind them and their personal sins. Okay. Quote, we war gamed it out, he recalled. Quote, I realized that Kamala was not at all nervous about taking on these guys, but she was very careful, unquote. Well, I guess I just have to take your word for it, because the story, as told as it is not a very flattering one. In an interview, Mr. Fazio said Miss Harris skillfully fought her way through the entire contest, including a runoff election against Mr. Hallinan, the incumbent district attorney who had hired Miss Harris 5 years earlier to lead his career criminal unit. Okay, Mr. Fazio is being very gracious, as any, practiced politician would be. When in a debate, Mr. Fazio correctly accused her of overstating the number of serious felony cases she had tried in campaign literature, she quickly and effectively pivoted, he said. You mean dodged. Quote, leadership is working with different communities as a career prosecutor. I've done that, which is why I, not you, have every law enforcement organization's endorsement, she said in that debate. Right. So instead of actually having to answer for her puffing up her resume, she dodged. I'm seeing a pattern forming here. I've only, like I say, I have not analyzed all of Kamala Harris's debates, but this article alone is giving me an idea of what to expect. After the contest narrowed to the runoff, Mr. Hallinan questioned whether she could be trusted to prosecute city corruption because of her relationship with Mr. Brown. Quote, he has an interest in having a friend in the district attorney's office, unquote, he said in the final debate of the election. Oh, we're finally getting some examples of exchanges. Okay. Oh, but before I get to that, Derek LaRue, thank you, Derek, so much. As always, it's very generous of you. As always, for your support and generosity. Hope you're having a good Sunday and hope you're enjoying the show. Thanks again. Where was I? Here we go. Okay. I got to click on the right tab or else I bring up another story and then I get it confused. Miss Harris fired back with her own promise to take on any potential bad actor, be they near or far. So again, she's dodging the question of her own character and behavior or the implications of her relationships in political circles. Quote, I will set up a public integrity desk, she said, the pace of her speech accelerating. Quote, that will be dedicated to dealing with investigating and prosecuting cases involving corruption by any public official, be it Terrence Hallinan or anyone else, unquote. Mr. Hallinan sputtered slightly. Quote, best defense is a good offense, but that really takes the breath away from me, unquote, he responded. I would have said, I would have said something like, questions about your integrity are going to be creating an office of public integrity. Or this public integrity desk is going to be situated underneath your personal integrity for not answering the question, not having to face up to any kind of questions of hypocrisy. Okay, so we've been given 3 different examples now where someone has come forward to ask her in some way, shape, or form about her own record or her own behavior. And in each instance, she has dodged and weaved and turned it back into some kind of negative attack on her opponent. Okay, well, maybe she's right about her opponent, but what does that tell me about her? That she's not willing to confront any criticism. She's not even willing to fess up to a mistake. Okay. 8 days later, she defeated him by a double-digit margin. So like 10? When she ran for re-election in 2007, which is now a long time ago, after facing a steady drumbeat of criticism for declining to seek the death penalty for a man who had killed a police officer, she was unopposed. Okay, so she didn't have to do anything to win that one. Several years after their race, okay, Miss Harris called Mr. Fazio to express her condolences after his wife died in American Samoa when she choked on a piece of gum. Yikes. Her mother had recently passed away, Miss Harris told him, and the 2 former opponents bonded over their grieving, Mr. Fazio recounted. Quote, I never forgot that, said Mr. Fazio, who is now a supporter of her presidential bid. He added, quote, as history goes, I'm glad she won because I like where she is right now, unquote. Her winning had nothing to do with her being selected to be vice president. Biden told us in 2019, 2020 and onward, he was going to pick a woman and preferably a woman of color. So everything else about her career was secondary or tertiary at best as a consideration and likely even further down the list. A clear difference between the candidates. When it comes to politics, Miss Harris is fond of moving with a boldness that can seem to contradict the more granular policymaking she tends to favor. Well, if she's fond of moving with a boldness, but she tends to favor more granular policymaking, which is it? If she's fond of one but favors the other, okay. When Senator Barbara Boxer declared that she would be retiring in 2015, opening up a Senate seat in California for the first time in nearly a quarter century, many in the state anticipated a sprawling primary contest contest packed with a backlog of generational talent. Miss Harris entered the field within days of Miss Boxer's announcement. She then proceeded to dispatch her rivals with striking force, rolling out a rapid-fire release of high-profile national and local endorsements, such as one by one possible contenders from Antonio R. Villaraigosa, probably screwed that up, the former Los Angeles mayor, to Tom Steyer, the billionaire environmental activist, to Gavin Newsom, the then lieutenant governor, made clear that they had no intention of jumping into the race. Really? Yeah, okay, so they decided not to jump in the race. So she didn't really have to face any opponents. Oh, okay. How? She effectively ran unopposed? So wait, 3 guys decided not to run, and you're marking that as some victory on her part? I mean, maybe so. You said she got a bunch of endorsements. What endorsements? How did that change the calculus? You're not going to tell us, are you? Okay. Thank you, Shadowclaw, for the #1 Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat
Whoa,
Fox.
wee. Whoa, whoa.
Oh, the more subdued tailed feature, Dogcat Fox. Thank you, Shadowclaw. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good morning. All right. That Senate race was won in April 2015 when everyone who was looking at it said, never mind, we're not going to run, unquote. Mr. Brokaw said, quote, every day for 2 months, we were clearing the field whether or not people thought we could, unquote. Barbara Boxer, a female Democrat, was stepping down. Kamala Harris, female person of color, was running, and a bunch of men decided not to take on a woman taking over a seat of a woman in politics in the Democratic Party. Wow. Wow. In fact, I might almost say, after a fashion,
Wowie, wow, wow.
I mean, it's really impressive. When Miss Harris reached the only debate in the race nearly 18 months later. So again, she became the candidate without actually having to go through any kind of crucible. No debates, no real competition within her own party. Just sort of effectively anointed. Huh. Passed as prologue. It reached the only debate in the race nearly 18 months later. She could score her most memorable moment by saying almost nothing. Again, damning with faint praise. Her opponent, Representative Loretta Sanchez, ended her closing statement with a quick dance move. Miss Sanchez dabbed, adopting an idea proposed by her makeup artist's young daughter and doing a dance popularized by football players, rappers, and teenagers. When the moderator turned back to Miss Harris, she paused, she sucked on her lips as her eyes widened. Then she turned to the camera and the audience with a broad smile. So, she said with a dismissive laugh, there's a clear difference between the candidates in this race. About a month later, Mr. Trump won the White House. That same night, Miss Harris became the newest senator elected from California. And that is the end of the article. So, that's the best you can do. In trying to convince me of Kamala Harris's razor-sharp debate skills, it's dodge questions asked of you, instead criticize your opponent, and then say practically nothing when your opponent does something demonstrably embarrassing. I mean, I'll grant her this. She made the best possible move she could in that last example. But then any idiot could have done the same thing. That does not highlight some skill on her part. She had the wherewithal of just letting her opponent dig her own grave. And again, if the Trump team is smart, they'll employ a similar strategy come Tuesday. Anyway, before I move on to the next article, let me take a look at what you guys are saying over here. Some emulation. Here's the problem. She's busy slipping, dipping, and diving when she ought to be diving, slipping, and dipping. No, that's right. Right? If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. That's what it was, right? I think. Urkelay is definitely, hey everyone, remember how much everyone loves Dick Cheney and the Halliburton boys? That was the most, I got to tell you, for those of you that are watching this in the future, yesterday or the day before, I think it was, Dick Cheney the former vice president under George W. Bush, endorsed Kamala Harris for president, apparently making that the entire Cheney family endorsing Kamala Harris. Dick Cheney has been rightly vilified by people on both sides of the proverbial aisle over the years, because during his time as vice president, there's a whole movie. There's a whole movie, dramatized for sure, but detailing the absolute lizard evilness of Dick Cheney over the course of his time, not only just as vice president, but prior. And now the Democrats are hailing Dick Cheney endorsing Kamala Harris as a win. I don't even know if there are enough looking glasses to step through to make that make any sense to me and still retain any kind of integrity or credibility. It's like, really? Yay, Dick Cheney. You know, that's like, there was a TEDx well, which one was it? So many, like, how many examples have we seen of like, it was the, I remember what it was now. It was a TEDx about color blindness. And I think the thumbnail said, who are Hugh or something like that. I was some clever wordplay on my part. Anyway, within this thing, there was a politician who had, I think, put up a bill or something to try to make color blindness the official policy or whatever. And then the Ku Klux Klan piped in and said, that makes it good. Yes, we want to go for that. Yes, we want to go for ending affirmative action and so on and so forth. And the guy's like, well, the Ku Klux Klan endorsed it, so it must be bad. And so now Dick Cheney's endorsing something, so it must be good in your political realm. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Moving on. Liesel 7. Willie Brown probably made sure she ran unopposed. Well, it probably wasn't worth it to run up against a emptying seat by Barbara Boxer. And especially, I don't know if it said in the article. I'm not quite sure. Did Barbara Boxer personally endorse Kamala Harris or anything? I don't know. It just probably wasn't politically advantageous to try to take over the seat for somebody exiting. It was kind of like a fill-in position or something. But to say that, oh boy, she took over for Barbara Boxer and ran unopposed in her own party, like, and is that a win? Is that a mark in her favor? Here's the thing. Kamala Harris has not been publicly tested in front of opponents, as they say, since like the mid 2000s or 2010 or something. Like every political position she's ended up in, she's run effectively unopposed for the last nearly 15 years. And then she lost her presidential bid. She was selected out of, again, practical oblivion to be vice president. And then she doesn't have to go through a primary or any kind of debates or any kind of vote to become the presidential nominee. It doesn't really matter what political party you're a part of. That is not a sign of confidence or ability. That's just a sign of dumb luck and favoritism. So even if I really, really like Kamala Harris, let's say I liked her policies and I liked her attitude and everything else, if she just sailed through becoming a presidential candidate without ever having to be really tested and winning, here's the thing, not just tested. I mean, she did debates in the presidential, sure. But she lost. She lost badly, like embarrassingly so. So you have to show that you can, conquer your enemies to gain some confidence from, well, the people. Donald Trump trounced every Republican they threw at him in his 2015-2016 campaign. That's how he got so popular, is because nobody could oppose him. Everybody was falling by the wayside. And not because they didn't want the job. They really wanted the job. And that gave him such a foundation that it, swept him into the White House. Kamala Harris hasn't had to do that. They're trying so hard, and this article is an example of, they're trying so hard to play up some very, very thin examples from a long time ago And they can only go to a long time ago because she hasn't had to be tested in the last 5 years. And the last time she was tested, she failed. So, anyway, let's move on to the next article. Let me stop this one. Let's see. What shall we do next? Well, we did Harris. Let's go for, this one. Okay, so I usually cover entertainment stuff over on Midnight's Edge on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern with Tom Connors and the team, Price of Reason, Nick Weiser, sometimes, who else is there? I'm blanking all of a sudden. Sometimes Mexican Iron Man shows up. Anyway, but I saw this tweet about this article and I got curious. So I have already read part of this, but I just thought it was interesting. A24's documentary, The Sixth, not The Sixth Sense, mind you, The Sixth, about the terror of January 6th is essential viewing. So why are the directors struggling to get it seen? It's essential viewing, everybody, yet nobody wants to watch it. Okay. Donald Trump recently announced that he will hold an awards gala celebrating the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Is it still called an insurrection? Has anybody ever been charged with insurrection? At this point, after all the trials, after all the court cases, pleas and otherwise, I honestly don't know. I sincerely don't know. Has someone actually been convicted of insurrection at this point? At the U.S. Capitol, just the latest example of the ongoing revisionist history and whitewashing of the extreme violence that took place that day. I don't think anybody on the right or anybody that was, say, supportive of January 6th, I don't think they're forgetting the most extreme violence that took place that day. And which extreme violence was done unto whom? The A24 film The Sixth, however, documents via horrific footage, what actually happened and how it was ultimately Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department that saved the government from being toppled by a massive deadly mob when the National Guard, stationed just miles away, didn't show up. Yes, our entire country, our entire government was under threat by a single isolated riot. Oh, yes, a violent riot, a high-profile riot, but a single riot. We weren't talking about this was drumming up all over the country or something, or that state houses across the country were being overrun. And things still proceeded apace regardless because our government is stronger than one isolated incident. Although I know there's plenty of people out there who've been frothing at the mouth over the last 4 years, dying for another such incident to happen, yet it keeps not happening. Filmmakers Andrea Nix Fine and Sean Fine, had a camera crew at Trump's D.C. rally on January 6th, which was timed to the certification by Congress of Joe Biden as president, and some of what they captured appears in The Sixth. But much of the documentary was stitched together from cameras and other videographers who were in and around the Capitol. In parentheticals, for those of you listening at home, the duo says they didn't pay for any footage from actual insurrectionists, however. Okay, so they only used footage from, all right, well, I mean, it's a documentary, it's very cherry-picked. Okay. Perhaps the most shocking images take place in an entrance tunnel to the Capitol, where just a handful of MPD officers are seen being bloodied and beaten for several hours. Bloodied and beaten for several hours as they stand as the last line of defense. As the film drives home, a bloody coup was much more of a real possibility that day than most people. A bloody coup? How? How would that have been a bloody coup? You know that the mechanisms of our government are such that even if, let's say they had burned down the Capitol, let's say they burned down the Capitol and, kidnapped half of Congress, there still would have not have been a coup. And also, a good portion of this country was not on board with this event. If you don't know that, I don't know if you know this, a large swath of this country was not supportive of what those people did, the most violent people did on that day at that time. But anyway, quote, "This city is my home. My home was invaded, and the policemen and policewomen that protect our home were brutalized for hours on end," Fine says. Okay, quote, "I can tell you from watching that footage at the tunnel where all that violence comes down, had those people gotten in, I think we would have been reading very different headlines. Some very violent people were saying, 'You're gonna die tonight. It's a mob. It's a riot.' I think people lost their minds. If those people got in, we wouldn't be seeing the dude with the horns and the shaman stuff. We'd be seeing really bad scenes of people brutalizing others. The DC police stopped that from happening, and that was very important for us to tell," unquote. Are you going to mention Ashley Babbitt? Let me just put it out there. Are you going to mention the one person who actually died at all? Okay. Here's where I lost it reading it, because whatever else you might say about your opinions on January 6th, left, right, or center, this one I lost it. The 6th doesn't harbor a partisan point of view. Rather, it's mostly through the lens of 6 people who were there that day. A surprisingly candid MPD chief, Robert J. Contry III. Okay, so a police officer on one side of the conflict. Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat. MPD officers Christina Laurie and Daniel Hodges. Erica Lowe, deputy comms director for then Representative Jim Clyburn, Democrat, and photographer Mel D. Cole, who wound up embedded inside the mob somehow, and perhaps has the most terrifying eyewitness view of anyone. So you didn't interview anyone who went to the initial protest and just protested. Let's say you wanted to stay away from glorifying any of the people convicted of actual crimes. I could understand that. Did you interview or have anyone mixed in this thing who was a participant in the initial protest, was not part of the actual riot or violence, to get their point of view on what was going on or why they were there? And yet this thing says the 6 doesn't harbor a partisan point of view. Yet it seems to be very selective on from what perspective it is telling the story, which is their prerogative, but don't make that claim, Variety, that it doesn't harbor a partisan point of view. Even if I completely agreed that everybody involved in January 6th, peaceful or otherwise, was just a total wrong-headed dundernut, you cannot make the claim this is a nonpartisan point of view. All 6 remain shaken by what they saw and experienced, and all say that it's critical to the preservation of democracy in the United States that the true story of January 6th is known by as many people as possible, and not just the same images that have been seen on the news, which only capture a fraction of the brutality. Boy, oh boy. Guys, do you know that to this point, no one has told the true story of January 6th? In the last 3.5 years, no one has told the true story of January 6th. After all the investigations, all the previous documentaries, all of the newsprint, all of the videos, all of the rhetoric, no one's told the true story. All right, everything else aside about the events of that day, are we starting to understand maybe why nobody cares about this movie? Even if it was completely nonpartisan. That's why Nick's fine and fine. Yeah, I realize I'm really old-fashioned with this, but I don't know. There's just something about sharing a single last name when you get married that feels more unifying than it does when you like keep your maiden name. And also, shouldn't this be like a hyphenated deal? I don't know. I wish I don't want to like dox somebody. I wish I could tell you of the most perfect merging of last names upon marriage that I've ever come across. Friends of mine from years ago, his name was something and her last name was something else, and they just smushed them together. And if you didn't know that they were smushed together last names, you wouldn't be able to tell because it sounds perfectly like any kind of other last name. It just happened to perfectly fit. And I thought it was a great solution. So find a way to merge them or just pick one. I don't know. It always feels like I'm looking at two different people instead of saying this is husband and wife or something. Unless, of course, they're brother and sister, I guess. I suppose that could be it, but I don't. That's why Nick's Fine and Fine are frustrated with the distribution of The Sixth, which was released on demand in May. In May? Okay, so it's been 4 months. The filmmakers say they had initially been told by A24 that The Sixth would be available to stream on Prime Video, opening the door to a much wider audience. That so far hasn't come to fruition, although insiders say such a plan is still in the works and it's up to Prime Video to make that decision. Okay, well, you signed over your contractual abilities to Amazon Prime, so all right. The doc is on sale to rent or purchase, but that narrows the potential audience versus having it available to stream by all Prime subscribers. Well, you signed the agreement, right? So if you knew that the ultimate decision on how to open it up to subscribers would be Prime's, then you were willing to take that risk. Okay, quote, "We have a bunch of questions and we don't have answers," Fine says. You can only speculate. You're right. I can only speculate. You can only speculate. So if you don't know, what are we talking about? I keep hearing that no one wants to do anything political. We know how films work and get rolled out. Well, if you did, then why did you agree to this arrangement? And if you did, why haven't you gotten a bigger audience? And on this one, it's telling that we've done everything, including our own press. Everything has been grassroots. For a big budget documentary like this, how much did you spend? What was the budget on this? You used a bunch of other people's footage and you interviewed 6 people. Documentaries, okay. For a big budget documentary like this, it's a little odd, but I don't want to constantly ask those questions and be mad. I want to channel it and do something. The election is happening soon, and this is important, unquote. Well, of course, you think it's important because it's your project and you want more money and attention. It sounds like you're mad, though. Parenthetical. It's probably worth noting here that despite some speculation, insiders say the timing of A24 securing a new round of funding led by Josh Kushner's investment firm Thrive Capital is coincidental. Kushner has joined the board of directors, but insiders say distribution decisions were made before that news. What's driving that conjecture? Josh is the younger brother of Jared Kushner, the son-in-law and former senior advisor to Trump. Okay, so your movie's being oppressed or suppressed by a Trump family member or tangential family member. I can only speculate. Oh, okay. All right. A24 and Prime Video declined to comment on the fate of The Sixth on streaming. In the meantime, Nick's Fine and Fine, via their Change Content banner, have started a Screen It Forward campaign to offer screenings of the documentary in theaters, college campuses, and other locations in battleground states through the election. Among Change Content's partners, Indivisible, which is passing out toolkits and media guides, and Gather, that's Gathr, because bad spelling makes for great organizational names, Gather, which finds venues to screen The Sixth. You guys are trying really, really hard to put out something that nobody really cares about or wants to hear about anymore, because we've heard about it endlessly for 3.5 years. As part of Screen It Forward, organizations and individuals can contribute tax-deductible donations to cover the cost of individual tickets. I'll pay for you to see this redundant thing. Sponsor seating for an entire theater or donate screenings for an entire voting district. I mean, I could do that. I won't, but I could. Indivisible will kick off its impact campaign. That's my favorite new word when it comes to DEI and other such things. Impact. They love that new word. Impact campaign on September 23rd with screenings and locations including all these places in different states. With more locations come. Quote, "It's natural for us to want to compartmentalize and bury those horrific events of January 6, 2021 deep in our memories. But we cannot forget," says Indivisible co-founder and co-executive director Leah Greenberg. It's almost like it's living rent free in your head. It's almost like it's practically irrelevant next to all the other destruction and chaos that was caused earlier in 2020, which you guys seem to forget, with the riots and Black Lives Matter and everything being burned down and on and on and on. Why aren't you doing like a documentary on Chaz Chop up in Seattle? Wouldn't that be interesting to look at the microcosm of governmental decisions on that day? Oh, but no, January 6th. An incident that just showed how relatively sturdy our political process was, because even an angry mob and violence at the Capitol didn't stop the country from functioning or the mechanisms of our constitutional republic from continuing onward despite it. Oh no, it was worse than 9/11. Quote, "The Sixth is a powerful film that reminds us of what's at stake in this election. Indivisible is proud to partner with Change Content and A24 to make sure everyone knows what's on the ballot this November and never forgets that stain left on our democracy." Don't worry, we'll never forget. We'll just continue to care less. Adds Gather CEO Scott Glosserman, quote, "The Sixth serves as an essential reflection on our democratic values, and through the Screen It Forward initiative, we are committed to making this important narrative accessible to audiences across the nation," unquote. Nick's Fine, not fine. Okay, this is Nick's Fine, not fine. Nick's Fine, not fine says the goal is to get at least 50,000 Americans to watch the Sixth before the election. Well, I'll tell you what. Here's what you do. You put the whole thing for free up on YouTube. At this point, you might as well. You might as well just post it free to YouTube. You will get more than 50,000 views. I can guarantee you that. Through Twitter, shares, likes, the whole nine yards. Hate watching and otherwise, you will get more than 50,000 people to see that before the election if you put it up on YouTube for free. If the message and the story about this is so important, then it obviously must exceed considerations of profitability. So just put it up on YouTube for free. You will get more than 50,000 views. Maybe not much more, but you'll get more than 50,000 views. Quote, "We want to get this in front of people before they vote and make sure they're informed before marking their ballot, she says. Democracy is very precious, and we all have a part to play in it," unquote. All right, put it up on YouTube for free. I'm being totally serious. I don't want this documentary to be suppressed. I think everybody that wants to see it should be able to see it. And there's a very easy way to do that. You upload it to YouTube for free. You tweet out about it. You put it on Facebook. You put links all over the place. Free documentary, The Truth About January 6th. See this before the election. What's the problem? Live in the modern times. Post it on YouTube for free. Post it on Rumble for free. Post it on whatever, Odyssey for free. All these things. You got plenty of options. But you're stuck in the studio system. Anyway. Zed the Snarky, and that explains why they won't put it up on YouTube. Bigger profits, they put it on Prime instead. The ad revenue wouldn't be enough for them. Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, what is their concern? Getting the message out or getting Amazon Prime to, pay up effectively? Get them their royalties for views and all that. Right. Yeah, put it up on YouTube. Yeah, by free, you don't have to do the whole movies thing and pay $3 or something. Sure, you can put ads on it. I'd be perfectly fine. I wouldn't say, oh, you can't put ads on it. But here's what you do otherwise, okay? You do it as a premiere, and you interact with the chat during the course of the film. And you give some, pop-up video kind of trivia stuff about it. And more likely than not, you'll get a few super chats along the way. And I'll tell you what, one super chat can defeat 1,000 views from YouTube's ad policy. So I don't know. I think these guys, I guess the question is, are they willing to proverbially put their money where their mouth is? If they really just care about getting the message out, it's not that tough. Really isn't that tough. Anyway, that was story number 2. Let's go on to story number 3. And I got to click this off first. Hold on. I always get these pop-ups and things. Speaking of pop-ups, let's talk about the border. Let's talk about the continuing and bizarre effort on the part of the Biden administration to tell everybody at the last minute before the election that Trump was right all along. Now, I mean, the results, or at least the indication of results being what they are, I can't complain about it as a citizen, as someone who is concerned about the border. In a way, it's an incremental improvement. But it's also a concession that for the last 3.5 plus years, Biden has been doing it wrong and Trump was right the whole time. And if you want somebody in office who's actually going to do what people want, and Biden is now doing and already has a philosophy for it, why would you vote for somebody who's been opposing it all this time, like Kamala Harris? Biden administration weighs making it harder to end asylum crackdown at border. Sounds a bit convoluted. Let's go through it. The Biden administration is debating changes that would make it harder to lift the sweeping asylum restrictions it enacted in June, drafting plans to alter the criteria that would be used to deactivate the strict border measure, 2 Department of Homeland Security officials told CBS News. So basically, they implement these quote-unquote temporary restrictions for asylum at the border, but now they're trying to make sure that they might become more permanent than temporary. The proposed changes concern a proclamation issued in early June by President Biden that has effectively shut down access to the American asylum system for migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally. Heaven forfend. Officials have credited the crackdown, the most restrictive asylum policy by a Democratic president, for a 4-year low in unauthorized border crossings. Again, the kind of thing that Trump championed and would do again, and Biden did not do, but could have done this entire time. Remember when he said, I'd shut down the border tomorrow if I had the power to do it, or if the Congress gives me the ability? Mr. Biden's partial asylum ban included a deactivation trigger in which the policy would be discontinued if the 7-day average of daily illegal border crossings fell below 1,500. Right, so you could still have 1,500 illegal border crossings or more. Under the proposed changes, the asylum restrictions would only be deactivated if the 7-day average of unlawful border crossings stay below 1,500 for 28 days, the DHS official said, requesting anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. Well, here's the thing. That's only if you are able to count how many illegal crossings occur. That means 1,500 captured individuals. That doesn't account for everybody that got across the border without being detected, or wasn't apprehended, or accounted for. It's still a screwy metric, if you think about it for a second. Either way, the changes being drafted would also include more migrants in the calculations used for the deactivation threshold. Currently, the calculations don't include crossings by unaccompanied migrant children who are not from Mexico. It's very specific. The updated calculations would include crossings by all unaccompanied children. Okay, so if mom and dad show up with 2 kids, you guys currently aren't counting those 2 kids in the 1,500, which means that even more people have got, okay. Those changes, if approved, would be enacted through regulations by the Department of Homeland Security and the Justice Department. Oh, so not Congress. So simply through effectively the executive, which Biden was unable to do for the last 3.5 years because Congress did not give him the ability to do so. Okay. In June, the departments issued an interim regulation to implement Mr. Biden's decree. As part of the standard regulatory process, the departments are working on a final rule. In 2024, after him being in office for the better part of 3.5 years, only now is he doing this. He could have done this day one, but that would have been racist and xenophobic. Also extreme. Luis Miranda, a DHS spokesperson, said officials, quote, are continuing to process comments received relating to the interim final rule published on June 7th, 2024. We cannot comment on the content of a rule that is not yet final nor issued, Miranda added. Okay. Lee Gellert, the ACLU lawyer leading the lawsuit against Mr. Biden's June order, denounced the proposed changes. Quote, the rule is patently illegal and was supposed to be temporary, but those contemplated changes would further cement the illegality, unquote, Gellert said. That might be true, but he's still been doing it because yay, executive orders. The June proclamation has ushered in a seismic shift in U.S. border policy. For the past several years, many migrants were released into the U.S. interior with court notices, a practice officials see as a pull factor that encourages migration because the government did not have enough personnel and resources to detain and immediately screen everyone for asylum. How's that worked out for us? Since the new rules took effect, fewer migrants are being released into the U.S. and allowed to apply for asylum in immigration court. Moreover, a higher percentage of those crossing into the U.S. illegally are facing expedited deportation to Mexico or their home countries, unless it's Venezuela that does not have an expedition treaty with us, or extradition treaty with us, pardon me, and so we have to just deal with them, I guess. While they were declining since the beginning of the year, mostly due to the Mexican government's efforts to slow U.S.-bound migration. Yeah, the Mexican government's efforts to slow U.S.-bound migration after a very low-profile meeting took place between the Biden administration and the Mexican government. All of the sudden, the Mexican government starts, turning things up on their enforcement. I'm sure there were no deals made that when the next Democratic president takes over, or at the time at least, when Biden wins the election again, something wasn't going to be, quid pro quo. But anyway, Mexican government's efforts to slow U.S.-bound immigration, unlawful border crossings along the American border plunged after Mr. Biden's directive was announced. I still feel like the numbers are just being shifted around on the deck like the chairs on the Titanic. It's like, oh yeah, the numbers really went down because we did some creative accounting. And why would I have that suspicion? Because I don't trust the government trying to give us window dressing on something, especially since the Biden philosophy on the border has been the complete opposite for the last 3 years. In fact, in July, when illegal border entries dropped to 56,400, how do you know? I mean, did you catch every individual and mark every individual who entered the country illegally? If they entered illegally, and if you're lacking in personnel, if you're lacking in ability to enforce the border completely, or at least effectively, how can you say that only 56,000 people entered the country illegally? I don't get that. The lowest points at September 2020. So this July was the lowest point in 4 years. The average of daily migrant crossings almost reached the deactivation threshold for Mr. Biden's proclamation. In August, unauthorized crossings rose slightly to 58,000, but remained at a 4-year low, according to preliminary government data. But 58,000 is higher than 56,000. So how could it remain at a 4? Okay. Mr. Biden's order signaled a dramatic pivot by a Democratic president who came into office pledging to oversee a more humane immigration system and reject Trump-era policies that severely restrict. Illegal border entries dropped to the lowest since September 2020. So when Trump was still in office. Okay. Mr. Biden's order signaled dramatic pivot by a Democratic president who came into office pledging to oversee a more quote-unquote humane immigration system and reject Trump-era policies that severely restricted asylum. But after 3 years of record interdictions of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border and the accompanying political backlash, the Biden administration has embraced broad asylum limits. After they failed. I think the operative term you're missing out on here is that the Biden policies have failed. His border policy was a disaster. This entire paragraph is very wordy. all to say Biden screwed up. And I'm putting mild language on that for the sake of this being a family show. In 2023, the administration issued a rule presuming that most non-Mexican migrants are ineligible for asylum because they traveled through at least one third country, one additional country, before crossing into the U.S. illegally. Well, that would be a good guess. If someone says, I'm from Venezuela, they probably crossed through the territory of more than one country before coming to the U.S. Yes. Mr. Biden's order in June rests on the same legal authority that former President Donald Trump invoked to enact a similar ban on asylum claims. The American Civil Liberties Union has challenged both policies. Well, if you enter the country illegally, you're a criminal and should not be here. I don't really care how many countries you pass through to get here. You broke the law. You broke federal law. What would happen to me if I broke federal law and was caught? Oh, yeah, I'd be prosecuted. I wouldn't be deported, except to jail. At the same time, Mr. Biden, unlike his predecessor, has paired those asylum restrictions with programs that allow tens of thousands of migrants to enter the U.S. legally each month. There's plenty of programs that allow tens of thousands of migrants to enter the U.S. legally, maybe not each month, but over the course of the year. It's called legal immigration, which we have plenty of. Like what? One of the policies distributes 1,500 daily appointments to migrants waiting in Mexico so they can be processed at official border entry points. Yeah, that's that whole app, that border security app thing. I forget what it's called. The other program allows up to 30,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to fly to the U.S. on a monthly basis if they have American financial sponsors. Okay, so like if they're here to work officially. Vice President Kamala Harris, now the Democratic nominee for president, has not issued an immigration policy platform. Has not issued an immigration policy platform. Okay, when was this article posted? This article was posted on September 4th, so that was 4 days ago. Now, maybe she's posted something in the last 4 days, but she is now less than 2 months away from the presidential election, and she has not issued an immigration policy platform? Really? Not officially? Okay. But her campaign manager signaled that, if elected, she would continue Mr. Biden's asylum restrictions. So she would take up the policies of Donald Trump. Okay. Trump, Harris's rival for the White House, has pledged to reinstate his hardline asylum policies, militarize the southern border, and launch the largest deportation operation in American history. Okay, so if you are for the kind of restrictions that Harris is going to implement or continue to implement, then you might like even better the furtherance that Trump is saying he'll take it. So where's the difference between the two? That Biden and Kamala Harris are not willing to go the distance on the subject, but Trump is? You see how this is kind of a weird move to make right before the election? Difference in taking the problem as seriously one to another. Trump takes it really seriously because it was part of his campaign from the beginning, and Biden and Kamala Harris are now late to the game. How does that sound? I don't know. Let's see. Frosted Glass, put those GPS tags they use to track animal migration on the ears of illegals when they're, oh no. I'm not quite that dystopian yet. Not quite that dystopian yet. Let's see. Oh, and Kieverdam says, hi, everyone. Hi, Kieverdam. Let's see. And I had another story. I did have a story about the moon. I had some moon news. You guys want to hear some moon news? Tiny beads on the moon. Oh, sorry. Tiny glass beads suggest the moon had active volcanoes when dinosaurs roamed the Earth. And I said this on Twitter the other day, and I have to apologize to NASA. Those aren't volcanic glass beads. I just happened to spill my arts and crafts kit out there the other day. I apologize for that. Volcanoes were still erupting on the moon when dinosaurs roamed Earth, new research suggests. What? The evidence: 3 tiny glass beads plucked from the surface of the moon and brought to Earth in 2020 by a Chinese spacecraft. Oh man, the commies are at it again. Their chemical makeup indicates that there were active lunar volcanoes until about 120 million years ago, much more recent than scientists thought. Okay. An earlier analysis of the rock samples from the Chang'e 5's mission had suggested volcanoes petered out about 2 billion years ago. Previous estimates stretched back to 4 billion years ago. The research was published Thursday in the journal Science. Quote, "It was a little unexpected," said Julie Stopar, a senior staff scientist with the Lunar and Planetary Institute who is not involved with the research. Okay. Images from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in 2014 had also suggested more recent, quote-unquote, volcanic activity. The glass beads are the first physical evidence, Stopar said, although more research is needed to confirm their origin. The Chang'e 5 samples were the first moon rocks brought to Earth since those collected by NASA's Apollo astronauts and by Soviet Union spacecraft in the 1970s. In June, China returned samples from the far side of the moon. But can we trust China's research on this? I know. It's moon news. I like moon news. I like when new things are discovered about my home, but all the same, if, other experts are like, that was unexpected. Not to say that you can't be surprised by something found in science, but I want corroboration, want a second opinion. Not that it changes a heck of a lot, but where did all the molten hot magma go? Magma. Malachi D. Wildman, as long as those beads come from the moon and not someone's moon. Someone's moon. Yes. Shadowclaw. Don't trust China. China as asshole. Yeah. Let's see. So scientists got things wrong again. Well, not necessarily. This is the determination by Chinese researchers and scientists, and you're going to need someone else to study and come to those same conclusions. I don't know exactly what it portends, because I'm not a scientist, the difference between 2 billion years and 4 billion years, unless that indicates something about the nature of the moon's makeup or the possibility of using something. I mean, we already knew that there were lava tubes on the moon. They've talked about using those for shelter for humans in potential moon bases for a long time now. So we knew that the moon had volcanic activity at one time. I guess just the calendar of it is more interesting, I suppose. I don't know. What time is it? Oh, it's almost that time. Holy cow, I came in right at the wire. Well, there you go. Hour and a half. That's what I usually aim for. And it's about as much as my voice can take before I have to duck out, because carrying a whole show with your own voice is sometimes a strain. This is why people have co-hosts to sort of spread the love, so to speak. I, however, often go solo, which is a really catchy sort of EDM song if you ever come across it. Anyway, anything else anybody wants to throw out there? Put your comments in the chat now, and I'll try to get to a few before I wrap up here. But in the course of wrapping up, hey, did you know I have a Discord server? Did you know that I didn't actually prep a link to the Discord server before I started the stream, and that I'm doing it right now as I fill up time just saying it in order to do so? Well, you would be right. Link to the Discord server is in the chat right now. If you're not already a member of the Discord server, all you have to do to join the Discord server is to click on that link for the Discord server, and you find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, actually watch the stream, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is 8th anniversary. I'm not going to tell you why that's the secret word if you missed the first 5 or so minutes of the show, because as I promised, I'd only talk about it once, and I only did. I'm just alluding to it here. There is a difference. Just say, hello, 8th anniversary, and I'll know that you watched the show. Alternately, if you really wanted to, get on my good side, and especially my sibling side, you could say, hello, Sister Scribe, or just happy birthday, Sister Scribe. And that would probably also tell me that you watched the show. Let's see. Keeverdam, I wish I had a co-host. You mean at work or something? Or elsewise? Yeah. It was fun having co-hosts back in the day. It get tiresome at times since we did it every night, but I miss Lords of the Night sometimes. I was on a stream with Monkey the other night and it was like old times again. I didn't even remember, like you said, good evening, everybody, and say hi, Scribe. And I said, hi, Scribe. And I just thought for a second, wait a second. I haven't had to say that in years now. That was fun. And let's see. Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp. I used to watch that on Nickelodeon. Yeah, Nickelodeon used to have Lancelot Link. Way back when. The olden days. Or was it Nick and Night or Nickelodeon? Something like that. Yeah, Lancelot Link. If you guys don't know Lancelot Link, Mata Hari, all the talking chimps and things, those were the days. Keeverdam, for streaming. Plus, I don't really know what to stream about. Hey, you and I are in the same park. I'm just making it up as I go along or let TEDx guide the way. So speaking of streaming, there is a hint, a possibility. I just have to have it confirmed that Tuesday for the second presidential debate it's the first debate between Trump and Harris, but it's the second presidential debate we've had so far. I may be streaming with Sinatra Says. We did a tandem stream last time for the first debate. I may do so again, a watch-along commentary stream, but I don't have any specifics on that yet. I need to figure that out with him, but keep an eye out on the Twitters and follow me on the Twitters, scribe_light, if you're curious about that. And as always, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at off-brand TED Talks for entertainment and enlightenment. As well, you can always find me here Sundays, as you already have, in some way, shape, or form, for 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, the Sunday stream, where I talk about news stuff over the course of the week. Anything beyond that? Oh, yeah, if I haven't already mentioned at the top of the chat box, please, again, take a look at the fundraisers and GoFundMes for AJ, Ron Harushan, Natalie, and Angela Arriaga. And as well, everybody, thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers, guys, thank you so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. So yeah, looking forward to the debate this week. We can check out those razor sharp debate skills of Kamala Harris. I'm looking forward to those razor sharp debate skills of avoiding answering questions and not saying anything. Sounds great, guys. Sounds great. Elsewise, everyone, hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. Hope you enjoy your week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care.